This is the second video in the Live Your True Nature 4-part video series. This video series will show you exactly how to live in alignment with your true nature, your cosmic nature, aligned with the sacred timing and karma of Vedic astrology. In video 1, I explained your cosmic self as emanating from the oneness of the sun, the universal transcendent light that pulses through all beings. And we learned how that one light is reflected through the cosmic mind of the moon and your personal connection through all lifetimes and through your divine form in this lifetime in the body. These two, this cosmic sun and moon, are called the Paramatman and Jiva Atman, the supreme self and the individual self, Purusha, soul, Prakriti, form, and they're symbolized by Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati. Today we're going to take it further and show from the Vedic astrology text how your karma has descended through the 9 planets, first as the pure emanation of Lord Vishnu on the highest level, then how those pure energies of spirit, the planets, have arranged and aligned your karma through your unique birth in this lifetime. That's something that we assess through the astrology chart, and we'll discuss how to see your unique genius in this lifetime and how to get the most out of your time here so you can live your unique life and fulfill your soul's mission. So we'll be unraveling those things in the future videos as well. But first, if you haven't downloaded the high quality image of this poster, Vedic Astrology, Cosmology, and Karma, please go to the link and do that, and join to receive all of the videos in this series. Also, please remember what you're about to learn is a product of more than 20 years of constant research, practice, experience, validation at the highest levels, and it's been tested in the field by students who run the entire gamut of experience, both beginners and advanced. My regular courses and certification programs have thousands of graduates over the last 15 to 20 years. They've been validated at the highest levels. In 2010, Dattatreya Shiva Baba, also known as Dr. Pillai, hired me to teach the Astroved certification program to his students. In 2018, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, also known as Gurudev, published my book on yoga and Vedic astrology through the art of living. So these teachings you'll hear have been vetted, taught, and worked over for decades. The real benefit to you is that my experience can now save you time, help you get the purest version of the truth. So this is how you can leverage my time and experience to save you time. So in today's video, we're going to really start showing the specific nuts and bolts of how to do Vedic astrology and how to practice it as the divine science it is, not just a system of fortune telling. Again, the first video in this series was dedicated to very high leverage concepts and philosophical frameworks that are absolutely necessary so you never forget what is the purpose of astrology, what is the purpose of life, and how are all of the apparent struggles in your life actually leading you back to a divine source, specifically, not just in general. But also, how can you not overindulge in all the good things in life as well, because that's just as big a problem, and it's not talked about nearly enough. So, typically what happens is astrologers will see astrology as the polarizing of good and bad energies. This bad thing will be over soon, then you'll start getting the good things again, or something like that. So if the astrologer doesn't say it, then the client will push the astrologer into seeing things that way. But frankly, that's a huge mistake. There are no bad things, only things we don't understand because our ego and limited understanding and awareness. So again, we're going to start delving into those things in great detail in these next couple videos. But for now, as you see in this diagram, it says Vishnu incarnate with karmas, gunas, and elements. And in fact, Vishnu as a god doesn't really incarnate, he emanates and has taken form. But in the Bible of Vedic astrology, you see this quote by the sage Parashara. There's some very crucial quotes that frame Vedic astrology in its proper context from these texts that I'll be reading from today. So as you see, that quote says, "The unborn Lord has taken many forms. He has taken form as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings the results due to their karmas. He is Janardan. He assumed the auspicious form of Grahas to destroy the demons, the evil forces, and sustain the divine beings." So, what does this mean? In the simplest sense, and in the highest sense, we could say that the universe, the cosmos, is God. Now, that sounds like a very strange and religious thing to say, especially if we're talking about a science, Vedic astrology. But if we pick up where we left off from in the previous video, and we understand the nature of this creation as being spirit descending into form, then it makes perfect sense. But let's also examine what he calls Vishnu in this context. Again, he doesn't use the word God, he says Janardan, which means he who allows us to awaken from the illusion of birth. Birth is called Janma. So Vishnu, in the form of the planets, is allowing us to awaken from the illusion of birth. Remember in the previous video, when I talked about what Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, about how the soul puts on new bodies at the beginning of each life, just like we put on new clothes at the beginning of each day? Well, this is the same principle. You have the illusion that you were born. You, your true nature, was never born, will never die, can't be burnt or wetted or finished. It's the imperishable soul. That's your true nature. But you have the illusion that you were born. And you can see even in the diagram it says Maya next to the category that has all of the planets, because we have this illusion that this external world is the ultimate reality. So it makes perfect sense that the planets in our solar system orbiting the sun as seen from the Earth would be the form of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the manifest aspect in the Hindu Trinity. You have Shiva, who was both the destroyer and the transcendent unembodied energy, like we already described in the diagram that you saw in the last video. Vishnu is the apparent and visible form of the universe that maintains the balance of creation, and Brahma is the energy which impels the creative force, and also that feeling of separation from spirit is also related to Brahma. But let's drill down into these aspects of the 9 planets as the face of Vishnu, whose energies and divine powers are the energies and divine powers in your consciousness and in your mind, and that divine consciousness creates everything in your life. As you see in the diagram, it also says Maya, goddess of illusion, time, and structure. So this Maya comes straight from the moon, that Jiva Atman, that Devi, and the forms associated with it. Everything that's not just pure Atman, beyond form or ideas, is emanating from the Jiva Atman or from the moon. And in the tantric system, that moon, that goddess, creates Maya, or the goddess Maya, which is this whole universe, the illusion that we're this separate external life and form. So once we see this Maya, we also notice that the sun as the soul, the moon as the heart, Mars as strength, Mercury as intelligence, Jupiter as meaning, Venus as happiness, Saturn as peace, and the nodes as magnification are the pure channels within each of us that come directly from the planets and created by the goddess Maya, this illusion of the external world as being the true source. But again, underneath the Maya and the illusion is the pure energy of Vishnu. So you want to understand that the planets don't affect you, they form you. And again, this isn't my opinion, it's stated right in the text. It says Lord Vishnu, who creates this universe, has taken form as these planets to bestow on the living beings, which would be you and me, the fruits due to our karmas. He assumed these forms with these attributes that are shown in the texts. So understand, when you're looking at astrology, this is why I've emphasized it so much in the first video, your understanding of this higher structure is going to mean everything. Because if you think the planets are just rocks moving around, doing things to you, that's very different than understanding that you are a composite of these 9 energies. Everything that could be known and understood about your life, your motivations, your physical body, all of these things are seen from these 9 energies and how they arrange in your natal chart. When you were born, based on your karma and your level of awareness and understanding in previous lifetimes, etc. So your level of consciousness relative to each of these divine forces in previous lifetimes are what compelled you to incarnate at this time with this body and at the exact moment that you incarnated. These are all very distinct forces. These planetary forces are distinct channels of wisdom. Or it's better said that they are channels to your wisdom and how that wisdom flows through you. Again, your energies come from the planetary forces. That's why when I read your chart and I'm looking at a planet, I'm looking at your relationship with power, with love, with discipline and courage, with meaning. I'm seeing how much of that you're getting in its pure sense. How much force and power and clarity, and how much of that is seen in your astrology chart that you're able to access. So you may wonder about the quality of Maya, again, and the goddess of illusion. Again, it simply refers to the fact that we have an illusion that everything is its external form, while we ignore the essence or the energetic component. And again, this is a tantric teaching where the goddess Maya is the engine which creates this world, this appearance of things, and it's the seductive illusion of the external world. But beneath that appearance of the world are the planetary forces in their purest nature as Vishnu. So this is the energetic structure that comes from Vishnu, and his form is the solar system. And you have incarnated into that. That is the matrix. And of course the planets are the form, but the body of Vishnu is actually the zodiac itself. So this matrix creates a sense of separateness and ego and the illusion that you are just a mind-body structure rather than a divine being. So the first thing the ego does is it fragments and distorts those 9 divine forces into a limited understanding and awareness. So your true nature is that pure energy, but through your ego it gets distorted. As we discussed in the first video with the sun, its pure nature is that transcendent identity, where there is only one and oneness. But through the ego, it doesn't feel like that's your identity. Your ego makes it feel like your identity is something inside your body. That's how much power you have. In fact, all the planets feel like something inside your body, right? Venus, which is happiness, feels like pleasure. Okay, that, pleasure is happiness. Desire is happiness. No, that's just the localized experience. Your true nature is the transcendent experience of Venus, which is bliss, where it's not some experience in the world through that illusion of Maya. It's a quality of consciousness and awareness which is not dependent on other people or on the world. And of course, we have the same is true with the moon. Instead of divine love and connection, the ego makes it feel like your capacity to love is simply some limited emotional experience. So in this way, the ego distorts our perceptions with each of the planets. And I'll talk more about the ego and its problems in the next video, and then how to return home from the illusions of the ego in the last video in the series. But we have to understand we're not just an ego. We have a unique divine self in this lifetime as well, as seen by those highest expressions of the planets. And we have a direct connection to those divine forces as well, but through the agency of these 3 gunas, the divine forces get distorted. These 3 gunas can be understood as an emphasis on spirit, emotion, and form, or in the reverse order, body, mind, and spirit. That's how we experience things. Through the body, in its grossest form, in the mind as feelings, and spirit as something more connected to love. So it's very interesting to ponder the nature of these gunas. The sattva guna, the most refined and the most connected to spirit, has an energy of going inward and upward, where you're introspected and elevated energy, right? The rajasic guna, the one most connected to emotions, has a sort of sideways energy where you're just kind of going back and forth, not really going, inward or outward. You're not really making much progress. You're really treading water. And then the tamasic guna, the one most associated with fear and darkness and ignorance, has an energy that is outward, external, and down. So you might say down and out is like tamasic energy. So the more we seek completion around these planetary energetic forces externally in the world of other people, experiences, sensual gratification, all the attachment, then the more we're going to be taken out of ourself, out of the true nature, which is found internally. So one of the most important things to anchor your understanding about life and astrology is in the evolutionary process of each planet through these 3 gunas, through body, mind, and spirit. those planetary forces are evolving. For example, each of the 9 planetary forces are evolving within you from a place of darkness, stress, and fear, which is tamasic, to a place that's more rajasic or emotional, and then to a spiritual or balanced, harmonious state within. So it's not until you can embody that harmonious state that the full access of that planetary force is there. So as we see on the chart here, filtered through the ego, the sun evolves from power struggles with others, to just dealing with our own power and confidence, to aligning that power with vision and consistent vision. The moon evolves from emotional struggles and attachment with others, to just our emotions going back and forth, to pure love and devotion. Again, this is from tamas to rajas to sattva. Mars evolves from anger, which could be violent, to just typical frustrations, which is more emotional, to channeling that into courage and disciplined action, which is the highest nature of Mars. Mercury evolves from distraction with details to just being kind of stimulated, not going anywhere with it, to organizing those details into clarity and correct understanding. Jupiter evolves from sort of hopelessness or perhaps even fanaticism to just typical philosophies and beliefs, to a sense of purpose based on good teachings and truth. Venus evolves from pleasure and indulgence through the body to happiness in the heart and, with other people, to the bliss of the soul, which isn't dependent on other people or worldly experiences. Saturn evolves from fear, control, guilt, blame, to worry and tangible fears, to being determined to overcome our shortcomings and to concentrate on the goal and to be able to live with peace in the knowledge that nothing lasts forever. The lunar nodes are a little trickier, and I'm going to leave them out here because they basically evolve through the concept of confusion into something that brings greater enhanced perception, but the lunar nodes magnify everything they associate with. So this simple evolutionary process is the same for everyone, regardless of their birth chart, because this is how the planets operate as pure forces, as forces of Vishnu connected to that source directly. And it's the same for everyone. Once we start analyzing the birth chart though, which we're going to be doing more in the next video, then we're going to see how the pure channel for each planet evolves for each individual and is distorted through each individual ego. That's what the chart is showing. For example, you may have a very powerful Mars, let's say in the sign of Scorpio or Aries. In this case, that channel of Mars and your capacity to access his courage and the strength that comes from it will be easier for you to access, and it'll be easier for you to transform and elevate the frustration and anger of Mars into something more creative, something that brings more strength. If Mars is in a more difficult sign where the energy becomes more frustrated or too intellectual, too emotional or fearful, then it's harder to access the courage and therefore you don't have as much strength. So in this context, the energy of Mars is still flowing 100%. You have access to it, but it's being filtered through your karma, through your ego, through what's called the samskaras in your mind, which we're going to be talking about more. That's what the chart is showing, your samskaras. And so it's going to be harder for you to access that direct power. But people should understand this, and it's something that I think astrologers do not get correct most of the time. Regardless of the dignities of the planets and how difficult they might be in someone's chart, the full power and our access to the full power of every planet is always present and possible at all times. After all, as you've just seen, these are all divine forces. These are aspects of Lord Vishnu. They are your nature in their purest sense, which is transcendent of your circumstances in this lifetime and your karma as seen in the chart. That doesn't mean a person doesn't deal with those things, but that's what astrology does, is it analyzes and is able to show why this divine force, which is your nature, is getting hung up and being filtered through the ego in this very specific way. And by the way, that's the reason you suffer relative to, let's say, Jupiter, which is pure inspiration. If you weren't that pure inspiration underneath it all, how would you recognize the difference? How would you know the difference? Unless your true nature was the full power. Because you see, again, you're always connected to the full power of all of those planets. It's just harder for you to access some than it is for you to access others. So the ones where there's difficulty, the chart shows the specifics of the difficulty, but then once you're pointed back to the pure energy, you're like, yes, that's the real thing. Yes, it is. So again, one of the biggest problems people have when they try learning astrology on their own and teach themselves and gather a lot of information, usually just about their own chart, where they distort everything and get it way out of perspective, is this type of very sloppy and even destructive thinking. And yes, it can be very destructive if you're in some kind of self-taught mode, thinking that you really understand these things based on a very simplistic application. Now again, I'm going to talk more about these things in greater detail in the next video so you can see how these principles show up in the birth chart. But you want to first understand these core concepts that you've incarnated in this lifetime with all the power that you'll ever need to ascend and to return home. And unless you know astrology really well, stop analyzing yourself based on this limited understanding and drawing these conclusions, because you're probably making a mistake and making it worse for yourself. No matter what is in your chart, you have full access to all of the power. The only thing is that you're looking at the chart to see what are the obstacles that are preventing you from more easily accessing that energy, but it's always within your grasp. So this is related to the planets, but in addition to understanding each of the 9 planets and the evolutionary processes of the planets, we each incarnate primarily through the ascendant, through the rising sign in Vedic astrology. So this rising sign measures which part of Lord Vishnu was rising in the sky the moment you were born. Because the visible form of Vishnu is the planets, the invisible form is the zodiac, which I'll talk about in the next video. So that is seen by the precise moment you were born at that precise time and location. So whatever that rising sign is, shows that you're a representative of that particular planet, expressing itself in a masculine or feminine way, with elements and modalities, and all the unique attributes. So from that point, we then read the chart. As the Rishi Parashara says, the Rashi rising is known as Lagna. Based on Lagna and the Grahas joining and departing from each other, the native's good and bad effects are deducted. In the next video, we're going to see how this divine nature you've incarnated into has become very specific, creating attachments, confusion, and how to remember yourself in the midst of all of that. And then in the final video, we'll talk about your path home and the joyous and beautiful journey home that awaits you once you understand Vedic astrology in this larger context. Again, until you understand it within this context, it's going to be a lot of fragmented ideas. Half of them, if not all of them, are actually misleading you. They're not serving you very well. You don't understand that hierarchical structure. And that's why I'm glad to have you watching these videos and learning this properly.